Good morning, everyone, and again, welcome to today's new LEA Data Managers training held by OSSE. Welcome, everyone. We will go ahead and get started for today. Hello, my name is Shanae Lyon. I will be a co-host for today's meeting. I am with the Office of the Chief Information Officer. I will let my colleague introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is LEA Data Managers. I'm also in the Office of the Chief Information Officer.
All right, so let's go ahead and start it. We will use the entire time here today. This is our agenda on the screen, and we will continue to go throughout the presentation. Let's get started. You have two ways to participate in the meeting. One, you can raise your hand, and we will acknowledge, mute you and allow you to speak. The other option is to go ahead and put your questions in the chat or the question section, and then we will acknowledge it and respond to it. All right. The questions are not visible, so we will speak them out loud for you. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay. As an LEA Data Manager, you have a few obligations with this title here. Underneath the LEA Data Managers, we do have a LEA Data Managers management policy that's available on the OSSE website. We will be sharing that out with you. But your obligation is to ensure timely and accurate data submissions, to attend trainings and monitor communications, identify and manage LEA points of contact, and fulfill record requests by parents, guardians, and adult students. Each LEA in the district is required to identify at least one data manager to serve as OSSE's main point of contact for data management and collection. And to be honest, we do share the list of data managers out across OSSE, and so people from OSSE may contact you for information. And for the Office of Chief Information Officer, you will be our primary contact for many items that we oversee, or data systems that we oversee. As an LEA, OSSE wants to ensure that we maintain data systems and infrastructure, support data quality, and LEA data submissions. It's also our responsibility to provide training and technical support to your LEA and staff members, and also to reduce the reporting burden on LEA. So we do have a lot of systems that have been developed over the course of several years to ensure that we are not asking you to do things several times, like give us a list of students that are enrolled at your LEA, and please verify their first and last name. We will also provide a data liaison to each LEA. They will also reside in the Office of the Chief Information Officer, and throughout the school year, they should have check-ins with you as the LEA Data Manager to make sure that your data are as accurate as possible. If you have any questions that aren't submitted through a support ticket, that they are addressing those concerns. And those meetings can vary throughout time. Over the course of the academic year, so around the enrollment audit period, they might meet with you a little more frequent than in the month of November and December. Also, we have a quick-based application called the OSSE Support Tool, or OST as we call it for short, and this is where you would send most of your tickets, and this is where you would submit tickets, especially if you have personally identifiable information for students or staff members. You will submit a ticket through this quick-based application, and then that will get auto-assigned to your data liaison unless it's auto-assigned to a different person here at OSSE to fully address. So sometimes you might submit questions in regards to policies and want to make sure that it goes out to the right person. Individuals are listed on the right-hand side in the blue section of who will get access by default to the OSSE Support Tool ticket, or OST again for short. And that's you, the LEA Data Manager, your LEA Enrollment Audit PLCs, your Special Education PLCs. If you have any students attending in public schools, those non-public staff will also have access along with your Transportation and Assessment PLCs. talk a little bit more about the OST. It is a bidirectional communication tool where LEAs can connect with us here at OSSE for technical assistance. It allows the LEA and OSSE, once again, to submit that PII, personally identifiable information, because we do not advocate sending students USI's first name, last name, and date of birth through email, and so that's why we will redirect you to the OSSE support tool. You can also review the progress of the tickets and any information that has been provided by OSSE and a resolution as well. Okay. Moving on to eSchool Plus. So eSchool Plus is what we refer to as the statewide student information system, or SIS for short. We do offer it to LEAs for free if they want to use it as their student information system. If not, you feel free to procure whatever your associated LEA may have. But we do require all LEAs to use eSchool Plus for certain reasons, which are listed here, to provide us with your points of contact at your LEA and even school level staff, to create calendars so we can know your first and last day of school, and also your non-instructional days. Those non-instructional days will be used for attendance collection. And also we have a continuous improvement plan this year where staff or LEAs can submit waivers if they're going to have a shortened day during the academic year. And we do a comparison against the calendars. And lastly, for the DC school report card, we do collect certain information, for instance, about your school, grade served, if you offer before or after care, if you're IB program, things of that nature. We have some set questions that have to be fulfilled. We also collect your school instructional hours as well, and just saying what time your students start receiving educational instructions, and then when does it end during the day. Also, we have parent engagement. So think about back in the day with the Parent and Teacher Association, thinking of that kind of information. We have a link down below that accesses the eSchool Plus site. I'm just going to go back through the list a little bit more. So for the POCs, we ask that you keep these up to date. If you know a staff member is joining, make sure they're added. If you know a staff member has left your LEA, please make sure they are removed from that POC list. We send a lot of communications out, and also the POC list is used to get grant access to our CLIC applications. This is a way that we want to make sure that people are receiving communication, they're receiving access to the necessary applications here that are overseen by OSSE. The calendars, you can put in the LEA level calendar if it's the same for all your schools. If one school has a slightly different calendar, you can go in and put a school level calendar. If the start and end time, first day and last day are different, if the non-instructional days are different. And also at the program level, if you have something unique, we tend to see this a lot with our adult schools here in the district. And then I've already covered everything for the DC report card. We have a question on the line. Let me get to it. I'm going to try to view it on my screen so I don't lean over to...
I'll read it. Can you be on more than one mailing list, aka listed as multiple POCs? How should those be prioritized?
Yes, you can be listed as more than one POC. I think we have at least 13, if not more, listed. So you can be the head of school, the LEA Data Manager, or you can be the LEA Data Manager, the Enrollment Audit POC, the Attendance POC, the Discipline POC, the Nutrition POC, whatever it is, just keep adding it down the list for yourself or for another colleague at the LEA. Keep in mind, if we do get a request for CLIC access and they have not gone through you, we don't find them in eSchool Plus, we will direct the person back to the LEA Data Manager for your LEA. Thanks for that question.
Also, how should they be prioritized?
The priority does not matter as long as it's listed there. We're just going to make sure that you are seen as that POC. And so, yeah, I'll stop there. But yes, the priority does not matter. Just get it in the list. If we open up a new one, make sure the right person is added. Okay. All right, I'll pass it over to LEA to go through the data flow.
Okay, thank you. So here on this slide, we have a visual depiction of the process that LEAs must go through before the start of school. So LEAs must complete this in order for OSSE to be able to receive your data. So first, we are going to start with the LEA feed by completing the LEA SIS mappings and the LEA data mapping application. You may be wondering, what are you mapping? You may be wondering, what are you mapping? So the LEA data collection template is an Excel file that's provided annually to LEAs. For your convenience, I have placed the Excel document in the handout section. And OSSE provides this, and it is the LEA's responsibility to review the document and ensure that you have updated your SIS accordingly with all of the data elements. Again, we update this annually, and what you'll notice in the Excel file is whatever the columns that are highlighted in yellow, those are the new ones for the school year. So we would ask that you would pay close attention to the ones annually that are highlighted in yellow, because those will be the ones that you have to either add or update the information when you are doing your mapping. So you are going to use that Excel file when you are, well, I should say the Excel file has the same information that is in the LEA data mapping application. Also, I provided a user guide in the handout section for the LEA data mapping application. And data managers have access to the LEA data mapping application. So once you map your SIS values in the LEA data mapping application, then as the data manager, you're going to schedule your SIS configuration sessions with CIO so that we can walk through and ensure that the values that you have in your SIS are mapped to OSSE and we can retrieve that data. Now this will lead us to the LEA feed management module. Although this module is used year-round at the beginning of the school year, you will use it to validate your data prior to OSSE, quote-unquote, switching your system off for the new school year. And OSSE requires the LEAs to confirm that the data are displaying accurately. We are actually offering the last training on this module tomorrow morning, and you can register for it on the OSSE training website, the Quick-Based application site. The training is going to be recorded, and that recording will be also available in that module if you are unable to make that training. Once you validate the data, OSSE or CIO will push the data into SLED. Again, the LEA will validate that data. Once the data are deemed accurate, it will be pushed down to our downstream systems. And the validation checks are to ensure that we are displaying accurate student data. Now, on this slide, we have a high-level guidance of what all new and existing LEAs must complete for OSSE before the start of school. So I'll start with the new LEA requirements. For new LEAs, PCSB will submit an Entity Management Information Form, also referred to as an EMI form, to CIO. The EMI form contains the LEA's name, phone number, the type of charter, administrative office address, grade served, age cutoff date, contact information, as well as other information pertaining to the LEA. The CIO uses this information from the EMI form to create the LEA information in the School and LEA Information Management System, also referred to as SLED. From there, accounts are created in SLED, SES, and ESchool Plus. All LEAs must enter their point of contact in ESchool Plus and create and update their school calendars. I talked previously about the LEA data collection template, but I will just reiterate. So OSSE releases the LEA data collection template annually, also the entry and exit guidance. The LEA is required to review these documents and update their SIS accordingly to ensure all data elements are present. And again, for your convenience, I have provided the LEA data collection template and also the entry and exit guidance in the handout section. So the next slide will show a visualization of the daily data flow process. On this slide, we have the visualization of the daily data flow process from the LEA SIS to OSSE. What you notice at the top, we have the source systems, and an LEA SIS can either be a non-statewide SIS, for example, PowerSchool. The statewide SIS, which we also refer to as ESchool Plus, which was mentioned earlier, and DCPS uses Aspen, and that is also a source system for student information. The LEAs that utilize a non-statewide SIS must complete their configuration sessions mapping to map their data to OSSE using the Automated Data Transfer Application, also known as ADT. LEAs that use a statewide SIS or Aspen do not need to utilize ADT. After SLED, so from ADT, the data will flow into SLED, and the LEA feed management module is housed within SLED. After SLED, the data flows into the downstream systems, such as the Special Education Data System, referred to as SEDS, and the data from SEDS flows into the Transportation Online Tool for Education, also referred to as TOTE. CLIC applications receive data from SLED, as well as the Enrollment Audit and Child Count application and the Duplicative Enrollment application.
Thanks, Leah. So next we'll talk about the LEA data collection template that Leah alluded to. So we have 4 to 5 daily data collection templates depending on your LEA. It includes the demographic, enrollment, contact, and attendance. Those are our 4 primary data collection templates. And then we have a 5th one called Adult Program. They are all located on the link that I shared in the chat for the website where most of the content resides. So on the OSSE collection, essentially collects the cumulative student level data for these collection fees. The first one, demographics, we're looking for the student's first name, last name, date of birth, address, if they're EL students, are they experiencing homelessness, things of that nature. The contact information, we're looking for our students' primary contact, so if that's mom, dad, legal guardian, foster parent, grandmother, things of those natures, we are looking for their information in that collection template. The enrollment should be, once again, a cumulative of the enrollment information. We're looking for that stage 4 enrollment, meaning the student has registered and plans to attend your school, and also the stage 5 enrollment. We're looking for those students who are receiving educational services at your LEA. So we're looking for the date of entry and the related entry code based off our entry and exit guidance that we have posted on the OSSE website. If the student does leave your LEA in the middle of the school year or transfers, for instance, to a non-public school, we expect to see an exit date and exit code corresponding to the stage of enrollment to come across in the feed. And if the student goes to a non-public, then we expect to receive a new entry date and code for that student at the non-public. If the student leaves your particular LEA, then we also expect to see the exit date and code for that student as well. So keeping again, just reiterated, this is an accumulative feed. We should not be removing students or deleting students from our student information system, okay? We also have the attendance data collection. This is letting us know for those students who are stage 5 enrolled and receiving educational services, we should be receiving attendance for those students. This year, I know everyone may be a new LEA Data Manager, but this year we did expand the attendance code they really include if the student is present or absent, and then also their learning posture. So if the student is in person for this coming academic year, if they're a distance learner, meaning there are three variations for distance learning. The first one is if it's situational. We're in a day of time where students may have to be remote due to the pandemic. The other one is a medical exemption. That is not the appropriate name, but that's what it alludes to. And essentially that student has approval to be remote. And then the third one is related to, and I'm going to find that answer right on screen for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a question about that too.
Okay, where's that question?
It says which data collection template includes the medical exemption for remote students?
All right, so when I spoke about the medical exemptions, I hope this is a little bit, it's not too small for you guys, but what we're releasing and discussing this Thursday is in regards to distance learner medical certification. That's the new name for it, and also the distance learning routine. And there is a distance learning situational as well. So these three here are the three I was referring to. I think there was a question on the line in regards to the medical certification. And so that is something that the LEA is really driving to receive if the student has a medical excuse not to physically return for in-person instructions at the LEA or at the school. And so there's a document that goes with that, and we expect to see attendance for those students. Routine. The distance learning routine is really around those schools, specific LEAs that got approved for online learning for this coming academic year, and that approval does come from the Public Charter School Board. I hope that was helpful here, but I'll save the rest of this deep dive conversation for this Thursday LEA data discussion meeting, where we'll have the policy owner on the line as well that can do a deep dive into this application. But this is the data collection template here, with the 4 key data collections going across the bottom, a description, and then here where we have a multi-option sets, meaning there's multiple choices like race, ethnicity, attendance, status codes. They are listed on this particular sheet. And once again, this is more of a data description here. Also on the website, we do have another link that shows the students, the adult program collection. Maybe I can just bring that up really quickly if Leah doesn't mind too much here. So much on the screen, so hard to see. And so just really quickly, this is the link that I did drop in the chat. It does have a lot of that information here, which Leah has shared out. We have the data collection template, we have the entry next to code, LEA data mapping application, and other things of that nature that we run every school year. If you click on this particular link, this is where you'll get, you can find the adult program collection template here if it's needed for your specific LEA. All right, let me get this out the way. Also, we have other ancillary data collections at the student level. The first one being the discipline. The second one is the certified grads list, which also includes students who may have earned an NEDP, National Extended Diploma Program, and also receive the IEP of completion as well from your LEA. The other one is a migrant student. We typically do not have students that are considered migrant here in the district, and therefore there's a waiver that your head of school will sign at the end of the academic year. And then the last one is alternative program destination. Once again, this is only for a handful of schools that will apply for this program, and this will be considered for the enrollment audit and child count process here in the district. All right, I don't think we have any questions on the line. Thank you everyone for bearing with us. Moving to the next slide here. So you have the LEA data collection template. That's wonderful. You've went through it. You understand the data elements. Now what? So at the beginning or before the start of the school year, if you have switched to a different student information system, or OSSE has issued out new data fields to collect for the new academic year, which is highlighted in that data collection template in yellow. Those items would need to be mapped
in our application called the LEA Data Mapping. We refer to it as a tool, but it's called the LEA Data Mapping application or tool. And essentially what you do there is look at the data collection templates. You will go in there, select, your LEA will be pre-selected for you, and we have a card for each data collection template. Once you have selected that template, you can go in and see each data element. And if it has an option set, meaning a drop down or multiple choice, but you can select from a drop down value, you can go ahead and select the, enter in those mappings. So what does the value of Hispanic maps to in your system? So those are some things that you would need to go through and give us that back-end mapping, the table and the actual field name. And that goes, and then that information then is used during the configuration session that Leah spoke about in the process flow. Okay, so on OSSE's side, at the end of the academic year or towards the end of the academic year, we roll that application over for the next academic year in case we have new fields that need to be mapped. We will keep all your mappings. We do not change them or delete them. We don't want to cause extra work every year for you. Okay, do we have a question on the line?
Where do we get access to the LEM?
So once you get your SLED credentials, you should have access to, and you're also listed as the LEA Data Manager, you should have access to the LEA Data Mapping application. And I will try to drop the link. Okay, a link will be dropped in the application, I'm sorry, in the chat here. And just really quickly, trying to make this a little more visual for you. If you're familiar with the SLED, my coworker's giving me a side eye over here. If you go to the SLED website, there's a link for related sites. Here's the LEA Data Mapping application. It will take you to the site. You will log in with your SLED credentials, agree to the information here, select the academic year, and you can do your mappings. Look at that. This one LEA has done a really great job with getting all this stuff mapped, and you can click on enrollment and see all those related fields. All right, get this out of here. All right, so once you've done all those mappings, you have, within the tool, there's a way you can schedule your configuration session. We have a group here within CIO, our data management group, which will schedule time with you and get everything mapped, and then we will start pulling that data. If you give us a thumbs up, we'll push that data all the way to downstream systems. There's a more detailed training in Leah's LEA fee management training that's coming up. So when we pull the data through the automated data transfer, or ADT for short. It acts as a bridge between your LEA student information system to OSSE systems. We use the data that you have provided us with. So those data elements, the table that is located, and the actual name of that field on the back end of your student information system. And we create a SQL query that pulls your data daily. We pull it at 2 o'clock every day, and that's Sunday through Saturday, every day at 2 p.m. And we also pull at 5 p.m. The reason why we have 2 pulls is for redundancy purposes, and that's to ensure that if we pull at 2 o'clock, we get your data feed, and we pull again at 5 o'clock, we'll use your 5 o'clock feed. If we pull at 2, it's successful. We pull at 5, it's not successful. We will use your 2 o'clock feed. If we pull for both times and we don't get the data, we will persist your data from the previous day or the date that we did receive a good feed from your LEA student information system. We have a few options here. If you have with ADT, the LEA can host their machine, or OSSE can host the machine, and we can do a direct connection to the SIS, or you as the LEA can set up a process where the data is exported to a CSV file, and we will pull from that, pick up that CSV file and pull from there. If you use ESchool Plus as your student information system, since that is managed by OSSE, we would just do a direct connection. You don't have to do the LEA data mapping and all that stuff. And we'll just pull your system from your data from that system, and we're only pulling data related to the data collection templates. And then the last one, we're offering this year a application programming interface to connect to the system as well. All right, I have a question on the line.
If we are an adult school and we did our mapping and we use PFDL, present full distance learning, do we have to change to present full distance learning routing, or is that only K-12?
Okay, so it applies to all LEAs regardless of the age. And yes, we are no longer accepting just the distance learning. They have to be mapped to one of the three. So it's not specific to the age grade. The grade level of the student. But I will make sure that we discuss that question on the line on Thursday. All right. Back to ADT. Once again, these are nightly jobs that kick off. Once we pull the data, process it, we'll send it to our downstream systems that Leah animated earlier. The data are displayed in our downstream systems. Typically, like 98% of our systems are ready by 9 a.m. in the morning. The last one being 10 a.m. in the morning. All right, enrollments. I'm passing it back over to Leah.
Okay, thank you, Shanae. And so here on this side, we have the 6 stages of enrollment. So the first is the application by student to attend the LEA. Next, we have for stage 2, acceptance and notification of an available slot for the student by the LEA. Stage 3, acceptance of slot by student and submission of enrollment information, often identified through My School DC. Stage 4 is the registration of the student and the student information system. Stage 5 is receipt of educational services, meaning the student is physically attending the LEA, either in person or distance learning. And stage 6 happens in conjunction with stage 4, and it's the LEA's obligation to determine eligibility for special education services or to provide special education services on an existing individualized education program, also referred to as an IEP. And this is triggered upon completion of stage 4. So those are the 6 stages of enrollment. However, for our purposes, we will focus on stage 3 through stage 6. So prior to the start of school, the parent will, through My School DC, go through the lottery process. Now, typically we don't really talk about stage 3 enrollment. However, because some of our data systems are now displaying stage 3 enrollment, I just wanted to highlight that stage 3 enrollment is the acceptance slot of the student. It is not the student physically attending the school or the pre-registration that we typically refer to. So stage 4 enrollment, the LEA will enter that into the student information system. And when we confirm your mappings in the SIS, you'll be able to view the students that you have stage 4 enrolled. Now, once school has started, for students that are physically attending, you will stage 5 enroll those students as the students are attending your LEA or school and they are receiving instruction. And again, stage 6 occurs in conjunction with stage 4. So if you have a student with a disability, our downstream system that we referred to before, SEDS, the special education data system, that is where those students' information will be housed. So in SEDS, you'll be able to see the student's IEP and the student's documentation that pertains to their disability. There are specific trainings that are held by OSSE on SEDS, as that is a system onto its own and has its own policies and regulations. But just be mindful as the data manager, while you are not the specific point of contact for SEDS, if you do not have an LEA, a special education point of contact, it will fall back on the LEA data manager. That would be your responsibility in terms of students with disability. So we talked about entry and exit a little bit before, and I provided the entry and exit guidance document. So just to go over this again, it is the LEA's responsibility to ensure accurate and timely data entry for enrollment and withdrawal. You have to record at least one valid entry or exit code per student in the SIS, and it'll reflect the student's enrollment and disenrollment. You have to collect and retain the documentation to support the codes used, and documentation for all exit codes must be provided within 5 days of the student's exit, and that is per the data management policy that Sinead provided and talked about a little bit earlier. Now, you may be wondering, why is it so important that we follow this timeline? We'll talk about that a little bit later, but if you do not provide the documentation or update your student information system in a timely manner, you risk having incorrect data, you risk having duplicative enrollments, you risk having overlapping enrollments. Also, by not providing a valid entry or exit code for a student, you risk having data errors. And we have, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, a click application for the unified data errors. So maintaining accurate student data will persist, or I should say it will be flagged if it's an error throughout our different systems.
And also to add in SLED, if we receive an exit code that requires supporting documentation, that student will persist on your SLED roster until that documentation is received by OSSE. Also, if we do not have supporting documentation for the exit code, that student may persist in other applications and reports that we complete and display out to the public or send over to the federal for federal reporting. Thank you.
So here on this slide, it's a lot of information, but what you'll notice is that we have categories for entry codes and categories for exit codes. Once you take a look at the entry and exit code guidance, you will see that it is also broken down by continuation, transfer, original entry, and then for exit codes, we have the categories of credential, end of year, transfer, exit state, discharge, and disengagement. I would stress that it is very important for you to review those exit codes and those categories and utilize them correctly. They do have impacts on reporting. Also, some exit codes are used specifically for certain student populations. So please also be very mindful when you are using those exit codes. Review it carefully. We do have some data validation that will occur for those exit codes. As Sinead mentioned, some exit codes do require additional documentation in order to remove those students from your roster. Also, please be mindful that if you have a student with a disability and you exit that student from your student information system, that student will still persist in the special education data system. That most exit codes will not automatically remove a student from SEDS. Therefore, your LEA special education POC will have to provide documentation in SEDS and then submit an OST ticket to have that student administratively removed from SEDS.
Okay, we have a question online. If a student has a stage 4 registration code and a stage 5 entry in the fall, exits and returns in the spring, does that student need another 1800 registration code? So the answer here, Dwayne, is no. In the spring, I just want to make sure. So the answer is no, we don't necessarily need the 1800 code if that student does return to your LEA within the academic year. You can just go ahead and send over that stage 5 entry code once that student has started receiving educational services. All right.
Okay, so here on this side, we have exit codes. So impacts of the documentation, as we've mentioned earlier, some of the exit codes require supplemental documentation to fully exit a student. Now, what you will be able to see that a student has not been properly exited. And one way is in our statewide longitudinal education data system, also referred to as SLED. In SLED, you would still see that student listed on your roster. Additionally, you may have a duplicative enrollment for that student because that student would have potentially enrolled at another LEA, and documentation was not provided to us from your LEA exiting the student, so that student would still appear on your roster and enrolled at another LEA.
Let me do the next. So for the LEA key dates and data dashboard, that's a new application that will be launching for school year 21-22. And so part of this, we're showing ESchool's where the student may have been enrolled for school year 2021, but did not return at any public school here in the district. And so we are going to expect LEAs to provide us updates to where that student went to by performing due diligence for those students. For ACGR purposes, if the student has not transferred to a diploma or degree granting, another degree granting entity like a high school outside the district, then that student your LEAs will be the responsible LEA for graduating that student, and it will reflect and impact the ACGR for your particular LEA in school. Once again, they already cover SEDS, so not every ESchool accesses a student from SEDS. And in these report card, there are logics on how we calculate various metrics, and one of them is a re-enrollment. Did the student leave your LEA and not return? If they did not return, did they move out of state? If so, then that student doesn't count against that particular metric. And there's other reporting that we do here in the district.
Okay, so here on this side, we're talking about duplicative enrollment. So there is an application, the duplicative enrollment application, which involves stage 5 enrollment. So a duplicative enrollment means that the student is enrolled at either more than one LEA, more than one school within the same LEA. So for example, you can think of an LEA such as DCPS that has multiple schools. So a student could be enrolled at more than one school within the same LEA. Also, you could have a student that is stage 5 duplicatively enrolled within the same school within the same LEA. And that is considered a data error that the LEA would need to resolve within their own student information system. Now, we do have a duplicative enrollment application that is used to resolve stage 5 duplicative enrollments. And I do make that distinction between stage 5. We do display stage 4 duplicative enrollments as well, and a student may have a duplicative enrollment that is stage 4 enrollment to a stage 5 enrollment. However, for purposes of resolving them in this application, we only are using stage 5 enrollment because those are the students that are receiving educational instruction. So if an LEA has a duplicative enrollment within the same LEA, they should fix that in their student information system. And duplicative enrollments between the two LEAs, they are to review your student roster daily. Collaborate quickly to resolve duplicative enrollments, and we have a duplicative enrollment resolution policy that provides guidance on how LEAs are supposed to resolve duplicative enrollments. We do use the data that we receive from the LEAs, and I mean we as an OSSE use the data that we receive from LEAs to do an initial determination of where the student is. However, we do give the LEAs the opportunity to appeal those decisions and provide documentation. This is another reason why you maintain all of your documentation. And the duplicative enrollment resolution policy will outline the type of documentation that is required to be uploaded. Now, this application is not released yet. It does not release until the Monday after Labor Day. And there will be a training for this application. You can be on the lookout for it in the training registration site. The training will occur typically around the time the application is released. So there is duplicative enrollments, and then we have overlapping enrollments. So overlapping enrollments reflect the number of enrollments that the LEA has with another LEA at the same or a different school. The difference between a duplicative enrollment and an overlapping enrollment is that a student would have an exit date for one and an entry date for another, whereas for duplicative enrollment, typically there is no exit date. It's the responsibility of the LEAs to determine the correct entry and exit date of the student. And so the status will remain on the LEA SLED roster. It's not counted in duplicative enrollment numbers since the students have received an exit code. There are some exceptions to that. So for example, if a student is enrolled at an adult school and a high school, and students that are enrolled at 2 adult schools, these are exempt because the student is permitted to have enrollments at adult schools. You can have a student that's a high schooler receiving, attending adult school for either credit recovery, or they're receiving additional adult programs. So those are valid. So next we have the Statewide Longitudinal Education Data System, also known as SLED. And SLED is a comprehensive repository of student data from early learning to post-secondary. I hope that everybody has received SLED training. SLED trainings are virtual. You would just need to sign up for them in the training registration site. They are held every Monday and Wednesday at 9 a.m. SLED provides extensive educational data to schools, LEAs, and to OSSE to better enable planning and trend analysis and performance projections. In SLED, we have 2 different roles, so you can have an LEA level role or a school level role. As the LEA, you would be able, as the LEA Data Manager, you would be able to see all of the students within your LEA, and they'd be broken down by schools. In SLED, you would see the students that are currently enrolled, with the caveat that Sinead talked about earlier, that some exit codes will require documentation, and those students will persist on your SLED roster. OSSE moves to the new school year after the second Friday in July. If you have already attended SLED training and you have logged in, if your LEA has not turned on their SIS and you've completed the feed setup task, you would not be seeing your data in SLED. However, if you have, when you log into SLED, you will be able to see the students that are stage 4 enrolled, unless your LEA is starting school early and some of your students are already stage 5 enrolled, and you'd be able to see those students in SLED.
Please put in the chat if you have not attended SLED training. Just want to make sure on our side.
As the data manager, you would have access to the data management module, with the caveat that you have to also have the LEA or school approval role in eSchool Plus. So if you log in, if you have your SLED credentials and you log in and you do not see the data management tab at the very top, I would suggest logging into eSchool Plus and adding yourself as the LEA approver. Now, the LEA approver role gives you access to the data management tab, which is important because this module will allow you to update the student's authoritative data. And what I mean is that even though you were sending over student demographic and student characteristics information into your SIS, if OSSE already has authoritative data on that student, it could be the student was enrolled in another school and that school has validated the student's data. It could be that OSSE received the data from another DC agency. But if we already have the student's demographic information, what you're sending over, and it's different, what you're sending over is different. So it could be the student's first name, last name, gender, date of birth, race, gender, and ethnicity. If that is different than what we have for the student's authoritative information, as the LEA, you're going to have to provide us with documentation if you want us to change the demographic information to what you have in your student information system. So in order to do that, you would use the demographic conflicts management module. And because we are giving you the ability to change the student's authoritative value, that is why it's an additional level of approval that is required. So that's why LEA or school approval role is required on top of or in addition to any other roles that you may have. Some LEAs do designate, say, the registrar to have the school approval role, as the registrars are the ones who have a lot of the documentation that's required for submission, but that is up to the LEA to make that determination. I talked a little bit before about the LEA feed management module. So the LEA feed management module is housed within the data management module. Again, we have the last training on this tomorrow. The characteristics conflict management module, this provides documents to resolve, or the LEA has to provide documents to resolve student characteristics, data elements for English learners and homeless indicator. For exit management, we talked before about how some exit codes would not automatically remove a student from the SLED roster. To have the student removed from the SLED roster, you would use exit management and provide that documentation. And it is a manual process review for the demographic conflicts management, characteristics conflict management, exit management, and prior year exit. That is a review process. We have a team in-house that reviews all the documentation and either will accept it or reject it. If the documentation is rejected, you will be provided a reason why so you can correct it. Next, prior year exit management. So we talked before about how exit codes are very important, that you need to provide them, and that we use them for different reporting purposes. If you realize that you have entered either an incorrect exit code for a student, we do give you the opportunity to correct that in the prior year exit management module. And so we would ask that you use that, and we do use this to correct your exit codes. And so this will prevent you from having to reach out to OSSE and submitting an OSSE support 2 ticket. You can just use this module, and again, it's a manual review process that we will update based upon the documentation that you have provided.
So we're going to take a deep dive into these modules that Leah just covered. Not too deep for dive, since we have recorded trainings and user guides for them, accessible in the SLED library, or accessible when you access the modules within SLED. Go ahead, Leah.
The LEA feed management module, it allows the LEAs to view the below status feeds, so the enrollment, demographic context, attendance, and adult programs where applicable. If these sound familiar, it is because these are also the templates that are from the LEA data collection template. So the data that you have mapped in the LEA data mapping application, you are able to see by collection, data collection, template type, the information that you've entered for the student. So the templates will match in the LEA feed management module, they will match the data collection template, which matches the LEA data mapping application. So all of them are connected. Just trying to make sure we're trying to connect the dots. And so this is where you are able to see the data that you have mapped from your SIS. If you have, and you're able to see, here we have the date of the feed, you're able to see the status. Green is good, red is bad. And you're able to see the last date that we received your data and the count. And that's the last column. And those are the number of records that we received.
There was a question on the line about the training that's, which one did she say? Thursday? Did she say Thursday? Okay. Your training for this module, LEA Data Management, is when again, Leah?
I believe it is tomorrow. But I would ask for you to just look in the data training.
The OSSE training
Yeah.
registration site.
You can say LEA so much. Yes, the OSSE training registration site.
And Thursday is the LEA data discussion meeting, a monthly meeting that we have. Lately, it's been every 2 weeks, but it's a monthly data discussion meeting that we have with LEA data managers and others who would like to attend to discuss up and coming information and things that need to be completed by the LEAs. All right, moving on to the next slide.
Yep, so I talked a little bit before about OSSE's having authoritative data for students. And so the demographic conflicts management module is where you would provide documentation for the student's first name, last name, date of birth, gender, race, and ethnicity. And again, OSSE has the authoritative data set. We've comprised it since the school year 15-16 with historic demographic data that we've received from other LEAs, CBOs, and other agencies. Also, at the end of every school year, there is a data validation that occurs, and that validated data is also used for our authoritative data sets and other reporting.
Exit management, which is another module within SLED. This one gives you a near real-time notification, or allows you essentially when you exit a student out of your in your student information system, the next day you will see in this module that student exit. Based on that exit code depends on how we handle that exit. So we have essentially 3 buckets in this module. The first one is completed exit. So these are the records OSSE consider exited and no further actions are required by the LEA. So for instance, if you said the student exited because they were under compulsory age, we will not require any further documentation for that student. Or if you said the student transfer out of, let me think of a good one. They went to an institution not overseen by the district, and then we would consider that an automatic exit. The incomplete exits are when we require support and documentation to certify the exit code, or we're waiting for another enrollment by a different public school here in the district. The other bucket is the student is on a certified grads list, and we need to receive that list to validate that exit code. For instance, exit code 2020, the student graduated with a degree, essentially. And then the last one, the last thing is that the student will remain on a roster or your SLED roster until that exit code is completed. So once again, for the incomplete exits, some exit codes, for instance, like transfer out to a school outside of the district, we will expect supporting documentation for the exit code. If we do not receive it or until we receive it and approve it, the student will persist on your SLED roster. If you exit a student and you said the student is leaving your LEA, going to a different LEA here in the district, we will flag that exit as an incomplete until we receive a stage 5 enrollment from another public school here in the district. If not, the student will remain in this bucket until you update that exit code in your student information system. And the last one, we have a few exceptions in here. Leah alluded to the unified data error, which is a click application here. If there's an error, we will consider an exception. We have a few examples in the user guide and also in the training video. Also, the overlapping enrollments will also be considered an exception because we would like those dates to be aligned. So a student exits your LEA and then enrolls at the next LEA or school. Or if there was an inappropriate use of an exit code, for instance, we have seen this, it has been many years since we've seen it, but if the student exited with the exit code that they have died or been permanently incapacitated, and then we receive a new enrollment for that student, that will be considered an exception. Or you exit a student for under compulsory age and that student is 6 years old, that will also be considered an exception. So for prior year exits, essentially in SLED, we only accept 1 academic year at a time of enrollment. And therefore, prior year exit module was built so that we can receive the exit codes for the last 4 to 5 academic years. I'm sorry, 5 to 6 academic years, 6 been for 1 specific LEA in the district. But essentially, you can go into this module, see all the enrollment records that have been sent from your LEA. If the exit code is unlocked, you can go ahead and change that exit code. For this coming academic year on September 14th, this module will be opening, and it will require you to make sure that those exit codes are updated by a specific date in, I believe, October. And you want to make sure that all exit codes for school year 2020, sorry, let me rephrase that. All enrollments for students for school year 2021 are provided with an exit code. So whether that student re-enrolled at your LEA, transferred to another one in the district, moved out of state, or whatever the specific exit reasoning for that student that should be applied in this system. OSSE is imputing let me rephrase that. OSSE will impute specific exit codes based on the data that we have received thus far for the student. Once again, these modules are open on September 14th. So for school year 2021, we're showing all enrollment records that were received from your LEA for school years 2016-17 to 2019-20. You will only see enrollment records for 2 buckets. One, if you have a school that has grade levels 9 through 12 and you are able to graduate students, then you will see those students. The other group is if you have students with disabilities that are persisting on your SLED's roster, whether they are re-enrolled or not, and they are still receiving services under IDEA, you will see them listed as well. So we talked about exit codes, right? Not every exit code exits the student from your SLED's roster. And therefore, when we move into the new academic year, that student may still persist on your SLED's roster. And so your special education coordinator should be doing the necessary work to make sure that the student can be exited. As part of the entry and exit guidance, there is an appendix. In the appendix, there is a part of the table that tells you what documentation is needed to properly exit that student based on that exit code. Okay. We kept the slide in here. When to use prior year exit, we kind of talked about this already. If this exit code is missing, if the exit has changed, if it needs support and documentation, if you were told by the family that the student was returning and you find out in a new academic year that the student moved out of state, you need that documentation to support that exit code. And once again, if the student is part of ACGR population, or if they're a student with disability still remaining on your SLED's roster. The student characteristics conflict, and essentially that module identifies if a student is an English learner or experiencing homelessness, and whether or not the data that we initially received from your LEA, if it said the student was experiencing homelessness, and in an enrollment audit, you said yes, and then at the end of the school year, you said, no, the student wasn't experiencing homelessness. It identifies a conflict and we require supporting documentation to make the change for that student. The same thing holds true for English learners. I won't get into the details because that training is a little lengthy, but those are the 2 student demographic characteristics that we do identify is, once again, English learner, and the second one is homeless indicator or their status. So I'm gonna pass it back over to my colleague to talk about CLICK.
CLICK is an application used for interactive reports and dashboards with charts, graphs, key performance indicators. It serves as a visualization software to simplify data analysis and help make informed decisions. OSSE has more than several CLICK applications. To assist LEAs at the beginning of the school year or prepare for the school year, we release early access applications in the spring to assist with planning purposes. So if you need to provide or obtain additional personnel or staff. So we have early access to English learners data, early access to students with disabilities data, and early access to immunization data. Those applications are released at the beginning of this school year, or I should say in the spring of the school, previous school year. We also release the subsidy residency application in spring as well. Entity management, this sounds like a very interesting word. So entity management is what you can look at to see the different points of contacts at your LEA and also other LEAs. So if you need to get in touch with another LEA data manager, you're able to go into entity management and see that data manager and get their information. We also have attendance applications. So in your student information system, you enter daily the student's information we have a DCPS sector attendance application and also a charter sector attendance application. And in those applications, you are able to view your LEA and school level attendance information. You can view it by student. You can view and click by month for your LEA, and it's broken down by the different attendance codes. So if you, for example, received a unified data error, which I'll talk about in a moment, saying that students, you have attendance that was not submitted, you can go into the charter sector attendance application and get a more holistic view of that attendance and those errors. The chronic absentee application, it displays just kind of what it says, students with chronic absenteeism. There's also a user guide in that application as well. The Unified Data Errors application, also referred to as UDEs, this is where you're going to be able to see the different data that you've mapped to OSSE, our permitted values, and if there are any errors. So you can think of it as all the data that you have mapped, the data that you're entering. OSSE is validating that data against different sources. So we are validating it against our special education data system, which is also known as SLED. We are looking at the data mapping application, and if you've mapped the data correctly, have you mapped it to the permitted OSSE values? Are you missing data? Because the data collection template will indicate what's required. If you have not provided a value for a required field, we're going to display that as missing. And we will inform LEAs during the data discussion meetings if the UDE count is high. We also display in the Unified Data Errors application enrollment, attendance errors, assessment errors, special education errors, and transportation errors as well, and transportations for students with disabilities. And we will also be releasing a new discipline sheet for discipline errors as well. Data validation is another CLIC application, and this is where we display to the LEAs the data that you have provided to OSSE throughout the school year. So you're able to see entry and exits for students, grade levels, at-risk data, ESchool Plus calendars, and in fact, we have already released for this school year the ESchool Plus summary calendar sheet for you to be able to see prior to the start of school whether or not you have met the minimum requirement for the total instructional hours and total instructional days. We wanted to be able to release that to you before you started your school year using the calendar information that you provided in eSchool Plus to make you aware of if you do not have enough hours or days so that you can update your calendar prior to the start of school so there are no surprises when it becomes the end of the school year and you have to validate your data and you realize that you did not meet the required number of hours or instructional days. Metric calculation confirmation. This is used for, data validation is used for reporting purposes and as well as metric calculation confirmation. This is really used for the STAR framework and DC report card. And this takes the data from different sources, a lot of it from data validation, and actually puts the calculations that are required for DC report card and STAR framework. The LEAs, you are given the opportunity to review those calculations prior to OSSE releasing it on our DC report card. So there is and I believe they're either, they're getting close to releasing it or they've already released, yeah, they're close to releasing it. So you'll be able to see prior to it being released on the public website that information, and you are expected to review it. And there is a certification process that happens. And there are many, many other CLIC applications that are available. So once you have access, if you have your SLED credentials, you should have access to CLIC, and I will drop in the chat the link to CLIC as well.
And you want to bring it up for them?
Yeah.
CLIC application. All right, so based off of what Leah said, you can always access CLIC we're going to work on this name, but it's the OSSE analysis tool. If you don't see that anymore, it will actually say Click. So when you access that, it will take you over to the Click website. When you log in, you should see on the left-hand side what are considered to be streams. You will have a stream for LEA and LEA archive. You will also have a stream specific with your LEA name on it. Most of our applications for you are listed in the LEA stream, and this is a list of your applications here. If I do it in this kind of view, you can see all the applications you have access to. Typically, we only show the most recent academic year application. Once we roll these applications over for school year 21-22, you will see the old one disappear, right? And the new one will appear. Yep, and so when the 2021 is removed from this stream, you can always access them here in the LEA archive stream. So we see, if you see here, you'll see 17-18 school year, all the way 18-19, all the way down. And so we have rolled over some of our Click applications for school year 2021. Coming back here is where Leah talked about many of the applications. I will not open them since I do not want to show PII for other LEAs, but what I will do is go down to our training stream here. You do not have access to this, but here are just a few that we have in here. Leah talked about the charter sector attendance Click application. When you log in and access that Click application, it will show you the number of sheets that it has. And so this is a quick way you can come and look at the various data elements in the students, right? We talked about the data collection template having the attendance codes listed, right? And so they're displayed here, and we give you the USI. Of course, everybody doesn't remember a number associated with a student, but if you expand that USI, you can see the actual student's name. This is an old version of it when our codes were very simple in life. So essentially you can see that information and you can scroll across. I won't hang out here too long, but you can see the student's name. Obviously, this is a training database. Click is pretty cool. You can use visualizations to filter on the data. Whatever you filter, it will remain true or hold that filter across all the sheets here that are in the Click application. We show submission rate for your LEA. We show the NC attendance for your students here. So you can see quite a bit of information here when you gain access to it. Once again, you do need SLED credentials in order to get Click access. Going back to when we talked about the eSchool Plus points of contact, you have to have certain points of contact to get access to these applications, and those points of contact are listed on the OSSE website. I know there's one that needs to be pulled forward, but this one, the Click application summary report here, or document, tells you which POCs have access, what time the data will be refreshed in the application, and a brief overview. Another application Leah talked about was in regards to, I'm sorry, I'm over here, close that one out. Leah talked about quite a bit the unified data errors Click application. And it's broken out by certain groupings of data. So the first sheet is just an overview summary sheet. The second one is about enrollment data. Third is duplicative attendance data and special education data, and along with some trends, how long have an error persisted for your particular LEA. In accessing it, you can just see clearly what students have. The students listed here, what is the error? Like I said, in Click, you can always filter and let me see all the errors related to city missing. We provide a suggested resolution and approximately how long it should take to resolve it. And you can see that information down below, right? And you can always remove the filter. You can always search for a specific USI in the system. Okay. I won't bore you too much longer on the Click applications. What I will do is minimize this and get this out of the way. And we're going to open up the line to everyone here on the call. If you have any questions, concerns, clarifications that hopefully we can answer for you, we'll go ahead and, if you raise your hand, we'll go ahead and unmute you for the next 11 minutes if you have any questions or concerns. Let me get it back over here and see. And you don't have to be shy. I'm frustrated looking on the screen. Do you have any hands raised in the chat? The participants. Okay, everyone's been shy. That's okay. No hands raised in the chat.
Will eSchool Plus rollover impact access to the ESY module in SLED?
So the answer is no to the question on the line. eSchool Plus rollover will not impact the ESY module in SLED. That is a separate system. We pulled the data based on the enrollments that you had coming across in the feed in comparison to SLEDs. And Leah can correct me if I'm wrong since she did the training. But no, that will not impact. It will persist after ESY. Your SPED coordinator should go in there, or LEA Data Manager could go in there and say whether or not the student attended ESY fully, partially, or did not attend at all. And make sure your SPED contact is also going in there into eSchool Plus and putting in the progress report for the student.
In SEDS,
your special education coordinator. All right, any other questions? Good. Is the training on Thursday's training on the OSSE site training? Yes, I think it was the last chat I sent, the second to last chat here. And what I'll do is just bring this screen back over.
it's the data discussion meeting.
Yep, and so, yep. What I'm showing on the screen here, when you log into the OSSE registration, I know it's pretty big here, the training registration, quick-based application. If you scroll down, oh, they're offering some in-person trainings. But most of our trainings are online. There are other trainings offered by other divisions in here. If you scroll for 729, you will see the monthly LEA data discussion. If you're looking for the LEA fee management, it's almost up here. It's almost there. Right here, I'm sorry. The LEA fee management is the other training that has been offered tomorrow. Any other questions on the line? You don't have to be shy. Any other questions on the line? If you want to come up and mute, please feel free. Just raise your hand. Once again, this training is more so of an overview of what you have been tasked to do as a LEA data manager. It is a lot of work in addition to the work that you have at the LEA, but we are here to support you. You do have your data liaison should be supporting you with the backing of the other the CIO staff members and other staff members here at OSSE. While we're just waiting for questions to come in over the next 8 minutes, just a reminder that as a new LEA data manager, you can receive the LEA Look Forward. It comes out every week with announcements, laws, policy, and it comes from all across the different offices here at OSSE with the important dates and deadlines and reminders, professional development, training opportunities. It comes out, like I said, every Wednesday, and you can always subscribe by sending an email to osse.communications@dc.gov. Once again, that's osse.communications@dc.gov with your name, your LEA name, job description, and official work email address. No Gmail accounts. All right. A question on the line. I have TOTE training tomorrow. So is there another data feed training schedule? The answer is no. However, we have a lovely user guide and the recording will be posted. Is that correct, Leah?
Mm-hmm. So it's a things to know handout, but the application is quite detailed in the terms of descriptions that have been provided. The training will be recorded and made available on the site, so you will have access to the information.
All right, thank you, Leah. Let's see what else, if there are any other reminders as questions are coming in. We talked about this a few times, the monthly data discussions. are held with key announcements for LEA data managers regarding data system processes, data collections, and training. We do invite people from different offices within or divisions within OSSE to come speak on certain topics. Typically, they are held every fourth Thursday. Like I said, during the summer months, we did do every 2 weeks because there's a lot of information for school year 21-22. Right now, they're only held via webinar. Historically, we did have them in person until we can return there. They will be remote. We do post them on the link that I initially shared that you can access and see the previous recordings. If you just started yesterday at the LEA or just been tasked as the LEA Data Managers, you can always go to the lovely website here. I'm just gonna go back to it here. I shared here. Up top, there is a link to all the LEA data discussion meetings that we have posted. Historical ones are here as well, okay? They have the recording in the PDF version of the PowerPoint. Okay. And if you don't know who your LEA, your data liaison is, you can always click here for the OSSE liaisons and see the list of staff members that is associated to your LEA with their email address here. Okay. Going back to the PowerPoint here. There's some additional resources. We will post this as well on that resource site that we were just on, but many of the things that we touch here will are listed here for additional support. Are there any other questions, burning questions, or your curiosity wasn't met? Let us know.
Within 4 minutes.
Let us know if you have anything, whether you're new, this is your second year, you're returning after a gap. I think there was a really good question that I responded to privately in the chat. Someone said, hey, I used to have a SLED account. Can I, and I think it's still, they had a SLED, they attended a SLED training, but they had an account from a previous academic year. And all you need to do is make sure that you are listed as the data manager in eSchool Plus points of contact, and then go ahead and send an email over to sled.info@dc.gov, and they can reactivate your account from a previous academic year and make sure you're associated with your correct LEA for this new period. Any other questions on the line? Don't be shy. Nope. Okay, I'm gonna move this over. I'm gonna just use some of this time to see if I can pull up some other resources for you. You're a pretty quiet group. I'm okay with that, but if you have any questions whatsoever, do not hesitate. I cannot see it between all the stuff. Any questions? I can show you the POC list. I can just make sure I'm on the right LEA. I'm just going to get, all right, so in eSchool Plus, just really quickly while we still have your attention for the next couple of minutes, if you go to staff in eSchool Plus, like we have the user guides on the site. If you click on the building number for your staff member, there's a points of contact right here in the lower screen. It's a little small here, sorry. Increase the font size for you. And in here is where you can just go ahead and select those POCs in a list. You can always search for them, right? Because the list could be a little lengthy. Like we said earlier, the order does not matter in here. Always make sure your head of school is as accurate as possible for certification purposes. You can always go to calendars Not sure what I'll get here in this database, but I won't save here. Yeah, this one is a training database, so we don't have that here. Also in SLED, just as a reminder, when you log in, this is a test site here. I'm gonna log in as an LEA user here. Should I log in as LEA? It doesn't care what I do here. All right, 1 minute to respect your time. Here's where we talked about, increase it here. Here's where we talked about there's a the characteristics conflict. We didn't talk about that one. That one is where you can see the English learners and students experiencing homelessness, where there's a conflict. But this is a visual here. This is the data management tab with all the ones that we discussed here. If there aren't any other questions, no. We have an appendix in the document, and we will have this posted out. Thank you everyone for attending the session here. And this is just an appendix for things that were removed out of the slide. But thank you again for your time. Hope that this is a great school year that we're entering in, and an exciting one. So until we meet again, have a great day and a great school year 21-22. Enjoy your day. Thank you. Okay.